So tell us a little bit about your starting point on a project. At what point will you become involved? Will it be literally here's a track, do your thing, or and do you have like a template that you'll always use, or is it always a fresh approach to work?
It's a template, but it's a fresh template. It's I have my returns laid out, my submasters laid out. Nothing's labeled on the template, and I do that deliberately because I want to set it up for the song rather than trying to force a project into my template. But I usually have all the returns and all the submasters and everything I need set up, and my busing arrangement is all set up, just not labeled. And then when I get a project in, usually comes one of two ways: either a Pro Tools session or just tracks. If it's just tracks, I just I load my template and just import the tracks in, and then bus and set it up like I do. If it's a Pro Tools session, I go through, they usually don't label their buses and send, so I usually go through and figure out what was going on in the session they sent me, label everything that's there, take out everything that's not used, and then and go from there. They usually give me a rough mix. If not, and they give me a session, I listen to the session before I do anything to it. Usually just bounce it so I have it as a reference.
So I get shipped, people send it through the internet, the files, and then I'll mix and we correspond long distance.
So will you get a Pro Tools session, or will you just get the bare
Either
stems?
Either way, I prefer to get the stems. I prefer to get tracks, wave files, and then I'll import them into a new session. And then the first thing I do is I turn down all the levels, and then I import my template, and then I begin to work. So
let's talk about this template, because a lot of people, I have my mix template, I have my tracking template. What's your starting point? So when you say, okay, so do you have the plugins already in the template, or is it just a routing template, or do you have particular things that you fall back on?
Well, everything in the template is routed already, and I divide the mix, the tracks, the wave files up into different categories, like drum track.
Yeah.
Drum tracks are all together, bass tracks are all together, piano tracks, lead vocals, backing vocals are all in groups, and then those groups all go into a sum that's in the template.
And then I start going through building on what they gave me. If I don't think it works for the mix, I may take stuff off or modify it, add other plugins. But I usually like to start from the point of where they left off, where the artist left off.
So will that be building from drums up, or rhythm section?
Rhythm section. I usually start with drums, bass, and whatever the main chordal instruments are, like main keyboard or guitar. And I go through the session, find out what makes the song work in its skeleton form, lead vocal, and then I build from there. I usually just set up a session when I get it. I just do it on my laptop and just to set it up conveniently. And then what I do is I set up several VCAs to group the tracks that they gave me. And that way, when I set it up on the S6, I make one layout. It's VCAs, my submasters, master faders, and then and so I can just attention any VCA and it spills. So I've some sessions are sent to me with well over 100 tracks, and I can usually keep it in 24 faders.
So that's your ideal, going to 24 faders and thinking, I can manage this.
I have 32, so in case I need more, sometimes I do, but basically I'm working balances on 16. I have 16, center section 16. So on, say, 17 to 24, I'll have the VCAs. And then, 9 to 16, I'll have the VCAs. 17 through 24 are my aux inputs, my audio subgroups, master faders, things I need to have right in front of me. So I attention the VCA for, say, drums and bass. All that comes out in front of me. I can balance the section, and then I have it on one audio submaster. So as I massage the mix and get things close, I always have those submasters, which are usually my final rides. They also relate to the stem tracks I make. Submasters are individually assigned to stem tracks that I can deliver with the session. So
now, within the template, I also have dummy tracks for each of these groups.
Right.
And on the dummy track, I preload all the plugins that I might use on those tracks and all the sends. So it's very easy when I bring in my wave files, I put them into their groups, the instruments into their pre-made groups, and then I just drag from the dummy track all the sends and plugins
That's
right
cool.
onto the
That's
tracks.
very cool.
And bam!
So none of this waiting for routing, and it's all there.
Yeah, you don't
ready
have
to
to
go.
reinvent it every time, and especially after you finish the first song in a project. Like, say you have a group of songs from the same artist. Typically, most of the sounds will be relating to each other or similar. So that once you get the first mix finished, I create a new template from that, and that becomes the template for the entire record.
Do you find that you maybe, as part of your template, do you have particular reverbs or particular effects that you kind of more gravitate to? And then
I do, but I don't put them in the template.
Right.
I'm thinking of starting to do that because there's some I use so often that if I have them, there's some effects returns that are pretty complex using several channels and several different effects to achieve one thing. And those chains that are more common to what I do, I'll probably set up in the template, or I could just have those. But I just try to keep myself not from relying on one formula. That's why I don't put.
That's cool.